Patch 106, the make or break patch for me and a lot of other users. And this is a long one, so I really hope that you like the sound of my voice, because I'm going to be talking for a good sort of 20 minutes or so on this, I think. I've already done one take of this. It's completely unscripted, so I'm a little bit pissed off. It took me half an hour, and there's this weird like clicking on the audio, so I have to redo it. Let's get into it. Received community feedback about balance issues in multiplayer. We've improved the overall experience based on that feedback and our own testing. So, powers. We determined that the base damage of powers was too low, which caused... Okay, I'm going to summarise this. It's way too long for me to read every single piece of information out. So, powers, buffed. Combat destinations, buffed. Weapons, assault rifles, and shotguns in particular, buffed. Pistols, buffed. Sniper rifles, some were buffed. Vanquisher, nerfed. Enemy factions, Ket, nerfed. Outlaws, buffed. Remnant, untouched. Player, fixed a bug that made silver and gold difficulties into normal stats for shield gates and health gates. I have a feeling this is relating to a bug which basically meant if you started a single player game on Insanity, then in multiplayer the enemies would have bigger armor reduction. So you would do effectively less damage than you would if you had have started your single player on normal difficulty. Pretty silly bug, but it was a thing. So I think that's a fix for that. Powers. All damage powers upgraded from cumulative 25% to 35% per power. Passive lines buffed. Power combos buffed by quite a bit actually. 60% in bronze, 140 in silver, and 200% in gold. I don't know if any of you remember, but a while back, I don't know if I said this in a Reddit comment or it might have been on an early video I did, but I actually had a theory that the combo damage was so low on gold, and the reason was because it wasn't scaling properly, that it was bugged. Last week in BioWare's stream they confirmed this, so told you so. And it looks like that's fixed. So power combos should do significantly more damage. They've also increased the value of the damage upgrades that you get from passives from 30% to 50%. I'm not sure this was an issue with the ranks of that particular passive line. I think it was more an issue of the lacking of base damage to begin with. So you polish a shit, it's still going to be shit. But if you actually buff something that's already good, then it's going to be even better. So it's actually worthwhile to take these now because power combos seemingly don't do nothing anymore. Combat powers. Barricade. I don't really see the need to buff Barricade because I think it was in a good place as it was. Some more defensive players may disagree with me, but I used it offensively, so this doesn't really make much of a difference to me. I didn't camp in my barricade, so I don't camp in my barricade, I should say. So it doesn't really affect me that much, but I don't think barricades really needed tweaking. I think it was in a good place as it was, but it's a welcome change. It's a buff, and buffs are good. Flat Cannon. Flat Cannon was awful pre-patch. Now it's had its base damage from 180 to 250, and you get 4 power cells rather than 2, which is good. I think perhaps Flat Cannon, I would have liked to have seen it be a primer or detonator, as it's maybe 6th evolution. I still don't think it's worth me speccing into, but I'll try it out. It's a buff, so and it may be useful now. It may be worth taking. Assault turret, again, similar sort of situation to the flat cannon. It was awful before, and it might be usable now. So we'll see if this actually does anything. The flamethrower evolution has been increased from 45 to 150, and the big one here is that the cooldown is now 30 seconds. That's been increased, but the cooldown triggers when the turret spawns rather than when it's destroyed. The problem with it before was it always got destroyed because its health values were too low, and because it didn't kill anything, it was always dying, so you never really had much uptime for your assault turret. Incinerate. Increase the base damage from 120 to 350. Okay, so that's almost 300%, and that's huge. That means Incinerate may actually well be a contender for as a primary source of damage rather than a ability you used when you wanted to prime and detonate things. Overload. Increased base uncharged damage from... Overload needed a buff because I always look at Overload as a shield stripper. Now, there was a lot of shields on Ket enemies, especially, that were unstrippable with a fully charged Overload. So maybe this will sort of increase. I would have liked to have seen more shield damage, maybe, but yeah, maybe Overload will be used more as a shield stripper now than a power which doesn't really do anything. Flamethrower, Cryo Beam, Energy Drain, they've all received pretty minor buffs. They were decent to begin with. They weren't in a bad place. They weren't in a great place, but they weren't in a bad place either, so they've got minor buffs. Shield Boost, Radius reduced, and support score generated by shield boosting is increased. So players who are shield boost spammers and supporting your team don't look like they're dead weight when they're bottom of the scoreboard at the end of the game. Invasion has been buffed, infection radius and spread radius increased. Remnant VI, it was in a similar sort of place as the assault turret. It was pretty useless because it didn't kill anything and it was pretty weak to begin with. So it's good to see this has been buffed. It will now teleport to players if the path is too complex. Sometimes it will get stuck. It just generally wasn't very good. I think this will be more like a combat drone that we've seen in Mass Effect 3. Rather than being sort of autonomous, it follows you around and, you know, is supposed to protect you, I guess. But it looks like it will actually be useful for its purpose now, for its intended purpose. So that's good. Biotic powers, minor increases to pull, throw, shockwave, singularity. So these aren't primary sources of damage. They're not intended as primary sources of damage, so there's only small buffs here. Backlash. I would love to use Backlash. Really, BioWare, I actually would, because I still haven't unlocked the Duelist, and I don't really see the synergy that the Asari Sentinel has. I've heard it's good, but I personally don't like the look of the class, so I haven't really tried it that much. The Duelist, though, eludes me. It's the one character, it's actually the only card in the game I've never gotten from a pack, so give, please. But it looks good anyway. Charge and Nova, slight buffs. They're not primary sources of damage either. I suppose Nova you can make a case for. Increased base damage from 400 to 420. Yeah, that's good. Annihilation increased. Annihilation actually got a nerf, so I'm not sure how I feel about this, because on one hand, Annihilation on the Asari Adept seems really strong, but on the Gladiator it was just right, because the Gladiator has issues staying alive to begin with, so the more perks you get when you're in close quarters with an enemy is a good thing. I'm not sure how this will affect the Gladiator. I think it will make her a little bit more squishy, but we'll see. We'll see. It's not a huge nerf. It's only a nerf to the rank 4 radius bonus, and cooldown penalty doesn't really affect it much because you always have it on anyway. So you spawn, you put it on, you don't ever take it off. Lance has slightly improved aim assist at longer ranges. I'm not sure how this really affects PC players because we don't have aim assist, but unless you turn it on if you're a filthy casual. But for console players, maybe Lance was difficult to aim at longer ranges, I guess. But it's good to see that it doesn't home in, so you actually need to aim it. Passive powers, barrier drain. Okay, melee is not viable as viable. They've continued to nerf melee, and which again is a good thing. I don't think melee should ever be a sort of, you should never have melee as a viable source of damage unless you're deliberately speccing into a melee build. So barrier drain basically makes it so you're no longer unkillable while you're punching an enemy, which was vital for staying alive when you were punching Ket and stuff like that, because you could heal your shields more than they could actually damage you. So saving barrier, though, good god, this ability is so good, was so good, and it's totally deserving of this nerf. You go on a character like the Asari Huntress and your barrier pops, you get low on health, you just use the stealth grid, and then you have that ability recharged. So when you go into a next fight, you can still jump around like a moron, and you can, you know, play like a headless chicken, and there's no downside because saving barrier will do exactly that. It will save you. It's a fallback. It's a crutch. So I'm glad to see it's nerfed. I don't think it's going to be as powerful as it is now, but I still think it's the go-to evolution for characters which have barrier. Biotic Ascension, the Kineticist is not in the best of places on gold, so any improvements to Ascension and the Kineticist as a whole is a good thing. Character stats. Asari Adept as base shields have been nerfed from 250 to 200, Krogan Vanguard as well. Not sure how I feel about the Asari Adept, but the Krogan Vanguard was unkillable on gold, and the first build guide I did was the Krogan Vanguard, and it is unkillable on gold. You get rage up, you get charges going, you have so much damage reduction, you just can't be killed. So that's a balance for that. Let's move on to the weapons. This is the one you've all been looking forward to, and there's huge buffs all across the board. It's so nice to see weapons actually being viable in gold now. Avenger, it's the Avenger, so don't you know. I don't think anyone was hoping for a huge Avenger buff, but the Matic has had its damage significantly increased, so I'm sure a lot of people are going to be pleased with that one. The Zalkin has had its damage increased. Valkyrie has had a huge buff as well. That's a really significant buff. The Soned, again, big buff. The Paw has got... well, we'll see how... The Paw is an energy weapon, so it's difficult to balance, I think. But we'll see how the Paw ends up. And the Halberd has been buffed as well. But the Valkyrie and the Soned and the Matic all look very good. And they were definitely going to be viable on gold, I'm sure. I'm sure of it. So let's see. Pistols, Carnifex. That's a big buff. Big buff to the Carnifex and Hornet. And the Sidewinder's been buffed a little bit. It was already decent, the Sidewinder, but now it's better. The Hurricane has been buffed. Looks to be quite significant, actually. More significant than I was imagining, which is good because I like the Hurricane. And it's an ultra rare. Please keep in mind that the weapons that are receiving the biggest buffs, so the Valkyrie, the Soned, the Hurricane, the Eagle, have all received significant buffs. The Roserads, the Ushior, they've all received massive buffs, and they have got their rightful place as the best weapons in the game, which is where they should be, I think. The Ushior, I'll touch on this one. Before it was useless. There's no two ways about it. It was one of the worst weapons in the game, and now it looks like it's a pocket sniper. It's an executioner on steroids from Mass Effect 3. It looks amazing. With the magazine upgrade, you get 3 rounds, so you've got a pocket Black Widow. Honestly, it sounds amazing. I can't wait to try it out. The Charger has been slightly nerfed. Charger was good. I think it was the best in class, maybe second to the Hurricane, but the Hurricane's an ultra rare, so accuracy slightly reduced. I don't think that's going to make much difference, to be perfectly honest with you. Shotguns, Katana, Disciple, Rosad, the Hesh, Scattershot, and Venom have all received minor buffs. The Crusader has received an enormous buff. It now does 808 base damage at level 10, 699 at level 1. That's a massive buff, and it makes the Crusader viable again on gold. Before it wasn't viable at all. One that I'm really looking forward to trying out, the Dawn has a special place in my heart. It was one of the first ultra rares I got. It's the highest level ultra rare I've got. I think I've got it at 5, and it was already good. And this looks like such an enormous buff to it. It has 3 rounds rather than 2 now. It does almost 1,000 damage base at level 10, and it's got more spare ammo, and it does more weak point damage. It's a projectile, so it's hard to aim at a weak point, but still, more damage. It's going to be monstrous. The first video I'm going to do, and the first thing I'm going to try out after I do this video, is try out the Dawn. I can't wait. As you can probably tell in the sound of my voice, I'm pretty fucking excited. Sniper rifles. Vanquisher has been nerfed. Now deals 600 base damage to 720, which is still slightly more than pre-patch Valiant, but it's still less than Black Widow, so that's good. It's now got its place as an easy-to-obtain sniper rifle, which is still pretty strong. It's still good. It's not being nerfed into the ground by any stretch of the imagination, but let's be real here. It was the best weapon in the game by a long shot, and it was totally deserving of a nerf. Shadow, increased damage from 46 to almost double damage, and it will now get more damage as you get closer to overheating. So I've heard that it's actually pretty good now as a power ammo applier for power combos. So with the buffs to power combos, the Shadow looks to be pretty good. Valiant damage increased, total spare ammo increased. Naladin damage increased as well. So good. The weapons that needed buffing have been buffed. I'm a little sad to see no Black Widow buff, but it's decent as it is. I don't think it is was in as desperate need of a buff as perhaps the Valiant and the Shadow were. That's it for the weapons. I think they're great. I think the weapons perhaps aren't perfect yet, but they are definitely much closer than what they were and where they should have been at the start of launch. It's taken a few weeks, it's taken a few months actually, 2 months. Almost 2 months to get all of this out to where I think is close to where it should be. There's going to be patches in the future, so we'll see what that holds. But it's a huge step in the right direction. Props to BioWare, because we as the community were asking for massive buffs across the board, and we damn well got them. So well done to the community, first of all, for actually being loud about this, and well done to BioWare for listening and responding to it in a great manner. I think most people would agree these weapon changes are paramount to saving the player base that has been dwindling ever since launch. And personally, I'm really looking forward to trying out some of the new weapons. Not new weapons, sorry, the buffed weapons. I mean, they are new weapons. They will feel new. So, really looking forward to trying them out. Let's move on to enemies. Ket, Wraith, health reduced by 20%. Chosen, Anointed, Destined, shields have been reduced. Anointed and Destined had very big shields to begin with. And the difficulty is once you took down their shields, you often had to reload, or you got pushed out of cover, or you were being pushed by a fiend or whatever, and then their shields would regenerate. So it's the Destined is the biggest shield reduction, 2/3. So we'll see how it pans out. Sniping Anointed and Destined will be much easier now because of that shield reduction. We'll see what the final result is, but Ket. I mean, I always said Ket Silver was harder than Outlaws Gold, so I think Ket will be a little bit easier now. Fiends, sync kills aren't as frequent. I believe the problem with teleporting fiends is still out there. I don't think this has been fixed. I think they said in the stream it's more complicated than what they could push out by the time this patch got around. We'll see though. I don't actually find this happens very often. It's never happened to me. It's happened a few times to some friends of mine, but it's never happened to me personally. I don't know how frequent it is for other people. I don't know how much it has to do with networking. P2P networking is not the best for things like this, but anyway, we'll see. They know about it, BioWare knows about it, and I'm sure they're trying to put together a fix for it. Ascendants. Cobra RPGs can damage the Ascendant after its orb's destroyed, and on Bronze, the Cobra can kill the Ascendant in one shot. The problems with this was Ascendants as assassination targets were incredibly difficult, and you would have a case where you would need one Cobra to take down its shield, you'd need one to damage it to about half health, and then another one to finish it off. So you had 3 Cobras per target, and obviously, unless your entire team's coordinating, which, as you know, it never is, it was really difficult to actually kill Ascendants, especially when there's more than one Ascendant. You've got a Fiend running after you and teleporting everywhere. You've got enemies, pushing you out of cover, the Anointed, the Destined. It was a shit show, and it was really difficult to actually extract sometimes, especially in Pugs, because Wave 6 Ascendants as targets was so difficult, and are difficult, and it should be difficult. It shouldn't be easy, but it shouldn't be at the point it is. I mean, I've had games where I've been walking through it, and then Wave 6 targets comes up, and bam, almost wiped. Or in some cases have wiped. So, yeah, it's good to see Cobras are more effective against Ascendants now. Let's see. Effectiveness of powers and weapons that lack extra weak point damage against the orb as well has been increased. I don't quite know what that means exactly, but it's probably a good thing. Anarchists, saboteurs, agents, pariahs have all had their armor increased. The anarchist in particular, I think its weapon needs a range nerf, personally, because it can snipe you from across maps, literally. I think they could have perhaps buffed the damage a bit more, and instead of buffing the damage by 20%, maybe they buff the damage by 40%, but also have it so the bullets cut off after a certain amount of time, just like, you know, the shotguns we get to. Sharpshooters, increased shields, decrease. There's some changes there. They're not hugely significant, other than the shields being increased by 60%. Krogan Berserkers reduced armor by 20%. Hydras, the weak point health they're talking about is the laser eyes, the thing that enables the Hydra to track you and shoot missiles that home in on you. The problem with this is once you take that out, the Hydra is pretty much useless, and you could take that out with one shot, so we'll see how it pans out. Hydras are more dangerous, that's for sure. Bug fixes, destroying Hydra's remains will properly disappear after being defeated. Item store. So they've added experience boosters to the item store, and these can be purchased with mission funds. And BioWare actually ruined a video of mine, because I was going to put a video out earlier on this week talking about how mission funds are pretty much obsolete, and they're not so obsolete anymore. They've sort of killed two birds with one stone, because experience boosters are something which will obviously allow you to level up your character faster. People were asking for different ways to do this, and also for more uses for mission funds. So this is what they've done. I think it's good. I would like to see more uses for mission funds, though. I would like to be able to buy certain weapons with mission funds, or upgrade my weapons with mission funds, or upgrade characters with mission funds, because getting a ultra rare character to level 10 is a really big grind. But yeah, as I said, I think mission funds actually have a purpose. So they're not going to be just collecting dust in my inventory now, so that's good. Equipment, adaptive war amp, engineering kits, and enhanced munitions have all had their damage bonus from 15% to 30%, so good. And that's it. That's it for the patch notes of 1.06. The Turian agent has been added to the game, and the XO Ghost, I think it's called. I think it's called the XO Ghost. X5 Ghost, sorry, has been added into the game too. So two new things, two new toys to play with. It's a good patch. All in all, it's really rekindled my desire to pick up and play the multiplayer. I said in my last video, I don't want to make videos for a game which I don't enjoy, and I was really starting to not enjoy Mass Effect Andromeda because of the lack of viability of things. Now everything's going to feel new to me again, and this is really going to feel like the game that I think we all picked up at launch and decided we wanted to play, and it's in a really good place. I want to thank BioWare for putting this patch out and working hard on this patch and listening to community complaints and taking that into consideration and actually implementing fixes that we asked for. And also to the community for hounding them. I mean, some places like Reddit and BSN are wholly unpleasant places to be when everyone's complaining. But, I mean, we can't kid ourselves. I mean, the state of balance was so out of whack. There was nothing to do really other than complain, because if we weren't complaining, we were probably playing, and then when we're finished playing, we're complaining about the session we just had, be that we've crashed or whatever, or we can't do any damage with XYZ weapons. So it's a good update. And if you're watching this video and you're wondering whether you should try Mass Effect multiplayer again, do it. Absolutely do it, and see where you end up. A lot of feedback from the community has been that this patch is good, and it's revitalized it's revitalized their desire to play and their drive to grind out and manifest and things like that. So yeah, go do it. Go pick it up and play it. If you don't like it, then, you know, uninstall your game again and you know, don't look back. But it's a step which I think we perhaps could have taken a few weeks ago, but it's still a step. It's a big step in the right direction, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where multiplayer is going to end up, because if we're if we've got this big of an update in the little time that multiplayer's been out, I think it's been, what, 2 months now? Coming up to 2 months now. I can only hope for more. I think it's going to be good. I think the future's bright. We'll see what happens. I'm going to be playing this as soon as I stop recording this, and I'm going to record some stuff. I may actually have some stuff up before I put this up, because I don't want to bog down my internet uploading and editing and stuff, so we'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm going to stop talking now because it's been over 25 minutes, so thanks for watching. Goodbye.